Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special pundits panel edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Thursday, October 31st, Halloween. Happy Halloween. And if you're scared now, wait till next Tuesday. We are here with our final pre-election discussion among our panel of national political experts that we've been checking in with throughout the campaign. Carla Marinucci, who is up on the ground actually in Michigan. We'll have a live report there. Bill Carrick, national political strategist, and Dan Morain, noted California journalist and author of Kamala's Way, the one and only biography of Vice President Kamala Harris. Carla, let's start with you. You're, of course, a retired journalist, but now you've gone over to the other side. You're actually walking precincts up in Saginaw, Michigan, a blue collar area. What are you seeing up there?
Yeah, well, after 40 years of covering races, yeah, I decided I couldn't stay on the fence on this one. And there's a wide number of Californians here working Michigan, but I got to say, it is an education. Reporting is one thing, but going door to door and talking to voters, and seeing some of the things they're facing. When you talk about the economy, I mean, I'm doing a lot of white working class neighborhoods where you see real poverty, mobile home parks, places where, people you understand the concerns there, and you see the Trump flags, and you talk to people. And I got to say, Jerry, the thing that is really coming forward to me in doing this is that women may be the key in this race. I mean, I have talked to a number of women at the front door who are like, yeah, don't tell my husband, or, hey, yeah, we got a divided house here. Or the husband will come in and say, my wife doesn't need any of that Kamala Harris material. Thank you. That kind of thing. I mean, there's that issue. A lot of the women I've talked to are very much ready to vote for Kamala Harris, or can be or want to have a conversation about it. And this is, you can see this campaign. It's a door to door, person to person thing. It's very labor intensive, but Harris has a lot of volunteers here from other states. The Trump people, by contrast, Elon Musk, and Wired has a story about this today, trucking in people from other states in vans to Michigan, which is such a crucial state. They have to sign NDAs. They don't know who they're working for until the last minute. And then if they object to working for Trump, they're told, well, you can get back on your own and find your own hotel then, because we're not going to help you out. I did talk to a Trump canvasser on the street and said, are you really voting for the guy? And he said, no way, he's just paying me. I mean, and so there's a big difference between having volunteers who are into it and paid people, the Elon Musk army that's coming in here. I can see that the signs are 50-50 here. This is a 50-50 state. So it's a different kind of reporting to do this in terms of actually seeing people who have, are looking for some kind of answer from politicians, and they do want to talk to you and get answers from you. So we'll see how it plays out, but
All
it's
right.
been
Well, Carla,
really
as long as you're doing volunteer work, let's talk after about you doing a piece for a newsmaker here. Hey, Bill, of course, we are sick to death of hearing about the swing states, the battleground states, the purple states, the six or seven states that matter. But based on my extensive investigative reporting on the internet, it seems like the conventional wisdom is sort of shifting to, there's seven states in play to, Kamala's only pathway is through the Midwest, the three blue wall states. Is that your sense? Are you obviously have strong connections and lifetime connections in the South. Is she still viable, do you think, in North Carolina and Georgia, and then of course Arizona and Nevada?
North Carolina and Georgia, she's definitely viable. Today, the 538 average is a tie, or 1 point, depending on what state. But that's basically a dead heat in all those states. So, yeah, I think she's alive and well. I think Georgia, the big problem is the Trump people. I would be a little worried that this explosive turnout is going on in Atlanta and the other Georgia cities in the Black community is going to be really bad for Trump. And the more he got engaged in the various crazy things he was saying, I think he moved voters, both Latino and African American, to Kamala.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, you were making an interesting point before we talked that there's really two campaigns going on. There's Trump and the circus, which is where the media dutifully follows after. But then there's the actual campaign that's being run by his handlers, and that is, all the money going pretty much online, on the air, and so on and so forth. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, sure. I mean, I believe in life and in campaigns, you can control what you can control. And Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles are total pros and have run a lot of campaigns and know that they cannot control their candidate, but they can control what they're doing with very targeted ads. And so there are, I don't even know if they're parallel. They may be perpendicular campaigns going on here, where Trump goes off and says the wacky, crazy, incendiary things that he says, and the campaign just focuses on swaying voters in Saginaw and swaying voters in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, and just trying to get out to undermine Kamala Harris and to pump up Trump. Yeah. So I find it interesting. If Trump wins, it will be not because of him. It will be despite him. Of course, he has his base, but I also think he has a ceiling, and he's not getting over that ceiling.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is worth thinking about. The one thing the professionals haven't done a good job of is organizing the fundraising, because they're getting outspent by huge numbers on television.
Yeah,
Kamala has been on national network television now for almost a month. He's still barely on now. He's barely on. He wasn't on at all for the previous 3 weeks. So that he's getting outspent big time in the ad wars.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at Open Secrets, Bill. What you say is very true. She has raised hard money, over $1 billion, more than $1 billion. That is huge. And to he's under 400 million. Now, 400 million is nothing to sneeze at, but it's still, it's 2.5 to 1. And what I find so interesting is her number of her percentage of small dollar donors, people who give under $200, is 42%, more than 42%. And I remember in 2008 when Obama really was doing well with small dollar donors, he was barely over 31, 32%. And those are significant because you can keep going back to those same people. So she's at 42% of small dollar donors. He's at 28%.
It's unbelievable. And that repetition is such a big advantage of those small donors.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Carla, what are you seeing on the air up there?
I mean, we're seeing just nonstop on the air. I mean, and yes, the money factor is a big deal. But what I'm wondering is, aside from the ads, what's helping him, and this is unprecedented, is the bots, the misinformation, the Elon Musk, the social media part of it. And I think that is something we've never seen before. And you can't. And I apologize for I'm in a campaign office here, but when you're talking about Elon Musk, he is literally tweeting 20 times an hour, misinformation and just outright lies. I mean, we have never seen this level. And remember how many people, 200 million users on Twitter every day. That kind of a misinformation campaign is just something, I don't know, what kind of effect is that going to have? We've never seen anything like that. I think it's unprecedented. And it is certainly a challenge for her. I'm just seeing this when I'm talking to voters. It's like, Does she have a plan for, abortion or reproductive care? Yeah, let me tell you what it is. Well, I've never heard that before. I mean, amazing, that at this level of the campaign, there's a lot of information that has gotten through to these voters. I can see that.
Yeah, and let me just stick with Michigan on this point for a second, because if it is in fact tied and everything's 1% this way or that way, I mean that's the kind of race where actually on the ground organization can make a difference. Maybe 1% or something like that. What's the you mentioned that you ran into some Trump people that were getting paid and there's all volunteers, but just in terms of bodies on the ground up there, how would you compare the two ground operations?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what the Trump campaign has on the ground. I have seen very few Trump canvassers out there where I've run into others. Just in this office here, we were in the Saginaw, Michigan area. We've got maybe a dozen people from California, the Bay Area, just volunteering. That's how, the Harris campaign has been overrun with volunteers, we have told, in Nevada and Arizona from California. And right now there's so many volunteers, they've almost got too many. But you've got this kind of volunteer output. That's a good sign for Kamala Harris. They're reaching these voters and they are very specific. I mean, I'm reaching, 100 homes a day, and every one of these people is doing the same. And if you pick up one or two people, which I have every day, who say, you know what, I'm going to vote for Kamala. That's
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
look, that's how it works.
Hey,
Right?
Bill, we couldn't begin to count the number of campaign ads you've made in your life. Most famously, the grabber. Not to bring that, but and we don't get to see a lot of the ads out here. But
Jerry, don't you think we should jog people's memory?
no, no, no. You kidding? The 12 people that watch this show all know what the hell I'm talking about. Believe me, including your daughter. Anyway, uh, but Bill, so we don't get to actually see the ads that the people in the swing states are seeing. But as I understand it, the two of the ads that the Trump people are running in heavy rotation and that are effective involve Kamala's own words. In other words, they're using video from her. One is that stupid statement that she made on The View when they asked her to, differentiate herself from Biden, said she couldn't think of anything right now. And then the other is this, which at first glance seems weird, from 2019 when she's speaking in support of free transition surgery for undocumented immigrants who are in prison, which, I'm like, what? But apparently that's it.
Well,
I mean, they're putting money behind it. Does it work?
I've seen those. You can watch it. You can see it on the cable. You see all the ads nationally, right from your own living room there in St. Barbara. The truth is,
I've cut the cord, Bill.
okay. Well, you can watch it on the networks
On
too.
YouTube.
National network.
Anyway, go ahead.
YouTube, you can watch them. I think the big thing that was interesting to me is Trump, that spot, the transgender spot, is so damn confusing. I don't know. I saw it 4 times, but I knew what the hell it was. It's a very confusing spot. So I don't know if that's, we talked earlier about these two categories of decision making, Trump and everybody else. I don't know if he's responsible for keep getting that thing on the air, but it is not an effective spot.
Okay. All right.
Bill, don't you think it sort of speaks to the broader issue, though, that I mean, obviously transgender therapy, hormone therapy for people in prison is clearly a niche issue, but it talks to a bigger issue.
You mean that she's a wacky Bay Area liberal,
Yeah,
San Francisco
I
liberal?
think so.
Well, that's obviously the point of it. But if you can't understand what they're saying, because the ad's so confusing, that's we know the theory behind it. The practical application seems to be quite deficient.
All right. Hey, Dan, you used to be a famous editorial page editor. I just want to bring in this other story we've been all yakking about all week, which is the owner first of the Los Angeles Times pulling the plug on a Harris endorsement on the editorial page, and then Jeff Bezos doing the same thing at the Post, the Washington Post, only for principled reasons, of course. But I mean, nobody cares who either one of them endorses, really. But what's the effect of that, do you think?
Well, the decision by Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, the owner of the Los Angeles Times, to pull the plug on an endorsement. What the LA Times says about the presidential race doesn't matter a whit on its editorial page. But the fact that he pulled the plug on this became fodder for Trump. Trump said even Kamala Harris's hometown paper, I mean, she lives in Brentwood, isn't endorsing her. What does that say? So the timing of it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. If he had signaled 6 months ago that the LA Times wasn't going to endorse in the presidential campaign, that would have been fine. People would have understood that. Some newspapers don't endorse in presidential campaigns because people have enough information. They know how they're going to vote. They don't need to be told by their hometown newspaper. It's different for a judge or a city council race or a school board race where people don't have very much information. So there, an endorsement matters, not so much on presidential races. And it raises the question, Dr. Soon-Shiong is a cancer researcher. He's doing research on a COVID vaccine. These are issues that are going to be pending before the Food and Drug Administration. Was this driven by his financial interests or his journalistic ethics? I think it's hard to say.
Yeah, well, I had Robin Abkarian on the show the other day. She's going to be speaking here, and it didn't seem to be a big mystery in the LA Times newsroom.
Right.
Well, but then you had Bezos do it on steroids. I mean,
Yeah.
on the same day that Trump's guys are meeting with his space outfit.
Right.
Carla, talk a little bit about. I mean, you're on the other side of things.
Yeah.
So how you enjoying the coverage of the presidential race?
Well, this is one issue, and I'd be interested to see how Bill and Dan feel about this. But in terms of now seeing it from this side, the media coverage is something that I think is just really interesting to watch. When you had Trump yesterday getting so much coverage on this garbage quote by Joe Biden, who is not running, by the way, but
and may not have
above the fold in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and yet issues like Elon Musk saying he's going to cut trillions of dollars. Elon Musk saying he is going to cut what, Congress? Hello, does he intend to be co-president? What's going on? That's a big story in my view. Cut trillions from the federal budget, and which would affect millions of people. That gets no coverage. But this garbage comment, it was 24/7 on
which
cable.
may or may not have been what he said.
Yeah, how does the media sort of justify the kind of coverage? And I have to say, you talk to voters out there, and they're like, "I didn't know Kamala had a plan on home health care. Really? That affects millions of people?" But there's been little or no coverage on it, and yet some of the stuff, I just think the clickbait thing has gotten to be a huge issue, and it has been pointed out. Trump has used the words garbage numerous times, scum, vermin, to talk about
garbage can, including called the United States a garbage can.
And yet, it was pointed out in his press conference yesterday in front of the garbage truck, not one reporter asked him about that. I mean, not one. And
Bill,
so
you've been. We all know how circumspect you've been about criticizing the political press corps over the years. But I'm curious. Does it matter anymore?
It was that time in '94, right?
Does it matter anymore with social media and TikTok and people getting their information, or is it are the Post and the Times and the other legacy media still sort of setting the terms of the debate?
I think other than the New York Times, which still has an enormous amount of enthusiastic subscribers and also has a whole bunch of uh, information that nobody else has because they're still pretty flush financially. Uh, uh, the Washington Post has been going downhill. LA Times has got the worst case of shrinking volume I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's very small. They're a lot of their stories are more local and less national. They don't have pretense of being a big national paper anymore. So I don't know. You know, the other thing about this business of coverage, some of this is created by the media itself. Think about all the uh, particularly television reporters, but some other reporters. They're out there in the field covering him in the garbage truck with garbage protection on. They're covering it. As this morning when I turned on MSNBC, that they were spending out of each hour they were spending at least 20 minutes on the garbage truck thing with the video because they had video of it, so they loved the video, so they were running it. So there are no, you know, Jules Woodcovers, David Broders, Jack Yermans, Johnny
Larry
Apple's,
Roberts.
somebody out there like
Dan
that
Morain's,
who's
Carla Marinucci.
interpreting for the public what's going on in the campaign. There's only covering this exhibitionism that is being presented to them, and, you know, and Trump does most of it, but you know, both sides do it.
Yeah.
Bill, you brought up names that of well, they were actually before me, some of them, but old names of great political journalists from the New York Times and from the Washington Post. But I think of people at the San Jose Mercury, Susan Yoakum, to work at the Chronicle. I mean, a great political reporter who was working for a regional paper, right? I mean, Carla, Jerry, great political reporters working for regional papers.
Sure.
If you came into California as a national candidate, you didn't get a free ride.
Right, right.
You got some pretty pointed questions.
No question about
From
that.
And they did press conferences
people in
with
Reading, reporters in Riverside. So we talk about the national press, but the hometown press is so diminished. It affects democracy. I mean, I don't even know who's in Michigan, who's the great political reporters in Saginaw. Is there anybody?
No, I don't think there is. And I think, your point is well taken that, the candidates would come into the Bay Area or California and they would have to give press conferences
And
they
interviews.
and interviews and it just right, not just 2-minute interviews with the TV station, but real sit downs with us. Yeah, absolutely true. They had to answer a lot of questions. That's not happening anymore. And I think it's suffering because I can tell people are not getting information about these candidates, even basic stuff. And the decline of the newspapers and the efforts by Musk to denigrate. I mean, he has tweeted 900 times even today. The New York Times is complete disinformation. I mean, when you keep saying that, people believe it, and I think we have the outcome right now.
Hey,
It's sad.
Carl, I want to go back to the gender gap just for a minute because not to oversimplify, but if her advantage over Trump among women voters is greater than his advantage over her among male voters, it seems to me she got a pretty good chance of winning the election. When there are more women voters.
Lights out.
Huh?
Lights out.
Well, yeah, I mean, then that is the question. I mean, as I said, just from the ground, I can see that is a factor for her. The question is, will it make the difference? You do have, and I've run into a lot of young white males, the bros who are like, I don't need any information. I got it, and they've got the Trump flag on their truck, That there is a definite divide. But when you talk to women, particularly about healthcare, about reproductive rights, about social services available, education, other things, I mean, they are definitely with her. And it is interesting to see the husbands who are like, don't leave any stuff for my wife, or my daughter doesn't need anything, in there's homes with several voters. So I'm seeing that happening. And I think the ads have targeted that whole issue. And certainly, Kamala Harris has talked about.
What do you say then, Carla? Do you say, excuse me, sir, perhaps you're confusing me with a 50s trad wife?
Well, I mean, I've been shocked at, Trump's comment yesterday about, I'm going to protect women whether they like it or not. Jesse Waters, the Fox commentator, said yesterday, if my wife voted for Harris, I would consider it like her having an extramarital affair. Without telling me. I mean, it's like,
so, hey, Bill, is that the most important demographic thing we should look for? I mean, we've seen 800 million
Oh, the gender.
about a left-handed
Gender, and I think we've seen in the states with large minority populations, it's going to be a big differential there. All this, BS that he was going to break into Latinos and blacks. You can see it in the polls now. That's all down. That's gone. That was all make believe. And he's going to run up big numbers with women, with African Americans,
he's going to run
Latinos, and Asians. He's going to do it. And younger voters who are in college versus the ones who aren't in college, or who are college educated versus the ones who aren't, there's going to be a big split there too.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, you love to write about money and politics. And I'm just curious, Carla's mentioned Elon Musk a couple times, but it's not just Musk, it's Bezos and a lot of these other billionaires, some of whom, said they'd never, support Trump again after January 6th, but are suddenly back. I mean, I read somewhere the other day, sort of comparing this to like mid-90s Russia, where we're getting a dictatorial style leader with oligarchs to boot. I mean, what's your perspective on how do you read all that?
It is extraordinary to me that people look to Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, as a tribune of the people. It's extraordinary, but people watched The Apprentice and believed it was real, and that remains a significant part of Donald Trump's appeal, that they think he's a great businessman who went bankrupt multiple times and didn't pay his bills, didn't pay his workers, that he's a man of the people. I mean, I find it I find it extraordinary. And then, Bezos and Patrick Soon-Shiong, I mean, I don't think they're necessarily campaign contributors, but they have divided loyalties. Now, you think back, Hearst, Chandler, McClatchy, Nolan, McCormick. I mean, all these were really wealthy people who owned news organizations, newspapers, and they all had other interests. I mean, they all had other interests, but their primary interest was their newspaper. It's not so with Bezos or Patrick Soon-Shiong. It's kind of a side, not even a side hustle. It's a side losing money operation. I find it kind of extraordinary. But the Democrats have their share of wealthy people as well. Mark Cuban, Reid Hoffman, Reed Hastings.
Well, this week
we're being controlled by I mean, so much of the discourse is being dictated by really, really extraordinarily wealthy people, and there's no regulation on campaign finance law. I mean, the notion that we're regulating donations is just ridiculous. I mean, just give it up. Give it up.
Yeah. Hey, Carla, so you're joining us from a campaign office up there in Saginaw. And
right.
I'm just curious, when everybody's just kind of talking there, what are they, what about the day after the election? Because we all know what's going to happen is Trump's going to come out and declare victory on election night. You know, maybe best case she wins what, 270 to 268. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, really.
And they're going to spend 10 weeks doing everything to take it away from her. I mean, what's the discussion about the post-election period?
I mean, I think there is a feeling like people are going to just put everything into it. I know they told us already that the final day before the campaign is going to be like crazy, because then that's where you go around to people's houses at like 5 p.m. and they go, well, gee, I haven't voted yet. And then it's like, okay, well, let me take you to the polls. I mean,
who's running? Oh, no.
It's going to be this wild thing. I think, you know, there's a lot of concern here about how that's going to play out and what kind of potential violence and other things. Also, part of the job here is going to be voter protection when it comes to the actual day of voting. There's early voting going on here now. In Michigan, you can only vote early until Sunday. They try to make like Monday, for some reason you can't. You know, make it as confusing as possible for people. And so that's part of the issue too. You got to educate them on how to vote and where they can vote. It's a lot of work. And so I think, yeah, there's a lot of nervousness about what's going to happen the day after, and, you know, who's going to declare it, and even protecting voters on the day of, because the Republicans have targeted Michigan as a place that they're going to challenge a lot of the votes here. And so it's going to be a hand-to-hand combat. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Hey, Bill.
One thing we shouldn't forget here, we got 7 competitive House races in California.
I was gonna just.
And some of those races are going to be a month before we know who won. And the same thing's going on in New York. You know, and all the stuff about, you know, New York's going for Kamala and California's going for Kamala. We got a lot of business in two mega states that is going to be a real slow counting process.
Yeah. Hey,
and don't forget the Senate races too, because up here in Michigan, we got Alyssa Slotkin.
That could go on forever.
That could go on forever. She's up, you know, right.
What's your read on the Senate right now, Bill? Is Tester's race go on in Montana, and Allred is still competitive in Texas, and Scott is going to win?
Unless we pull some rabbit out of our hat, like Texas, I think we probably lose the Senate.
Yeah. And Dan, you were the first one in our series of discussions, which will be taught in media classes from here on, about covering the election, to point out the importance of the House races that may be the.
Well, yeah, especially this. Well, it's always important who controls the House, but the House gets sworn in before the president, and the House is the one that will matter if it is a tie. I mean, it
was interesting that,
you know, God forbid it's a tie, because it will be a total. You know, I mean, if they tie in the electoral vote, then it goes to the House, and whichever party has the most states, which will almost certainly will be the Republicans,
right,
will decide it. So, yeah, we're in for a good God, rocky time.
Here, Bill, you're an old Washington hand. Tell me what happens here, because as Morain points out, it's the new House that gets to certify the vote. But what if, you know, I know the Republicans in the House are extremely well organized, and they would never have a fight over the speakership. But what if they can't? What happens if they can't organize themselves and they go 25 ballots without having a speaker? And, you know, generally,
I mean, there's two models here. It's a legitimately close race that we can't figure it out yet, right? Second model is Trump making a bunch of stuff up. Now, will we be interested to see how much tolerance some of these House members have for him dragging everybody through what he did, the January 6th mess. So
Biden runs.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. They could be, that could be an existential threat to the Republican Party if he does that again.
Well, the Supreme Court has said that the president has immunity for official action. So couldn't Biden just like order him arrested or something Something like that. All right, we got to go. But Carla, what are you
No,
going to be
thanks.
watching on election night? What should people in California be watching for?
I mean, obviously, the swing states are going to be so important. Michigan, I think, is ground zero. I really do think it's that. And by the way, we've seen a number of Californians coming through here. Ro Khanna, Gavin, no, not lately, but so I'm going to be looking for, where Kamala spends her final night. I think is going to be in one of the black colleges, I believe.
Howard.
Yeah. So here, I mean, there's pedal to the metal here. Michigan is going to be tough. So I'm going to be watching that. But I think the women's vote and how women pull for her in the final days. You're already seeing this gap, and whether it widens, she's doing better than Biden was doing at a similar point in the last cycle. So I think that's where the traction is going to be. So that's what I'm going to be looking for.
So at 5 p.m. in California, what are you going to be looking for in the?
I think the first thing we're going to get some indications from is North Carolina, which is a very efficient system, and they count the votes very fast there, and they usually have it all done, wrapped up within 24 hours of the election. So North Carolina may be the first one that actually has a definitive outcome.
All right.
But I totally agree with Michigan, and Pennsylvania is obviously another place which has historically had very, very close elections. The state is very polarized politically,
and very slow count,
and a very slow count. And they have been sort of arrogant in the past about the slow count. None of your business. Well, now it's everybody's business.
Yeah. Well, Josh Shapiro is there, the man who
Shapiro is smart, and they have a good AG, so they may clean up their act, and that's a possibility. I hate to be an optimist, but it's a possibility we'll have a little bit better operation in getting this all counted.
All right, Dan, what's your last thoughts on election night and what you're going to be looking at?
Well, I'm probably going to go to bed early on Tuesday, November 5th, because I don't think we're going to know Tuesday.
Take a gummy and not.
I'd prefer Manhattan actually, but not 3. Yeah, we're not going to know. We're certainly not going to know how the House turns out, because California is going to be slow, and there are 7 races in play here, and I think Democrats will be lucky to net 2. But beyond that, I think win or lose, the Democrats really have to do some soul searching about getting back to roots, and why is it that the people who Carla's not meeting in Saginaw, or the Latinos who are being squeezed money wise in Arizona and Nevada, why it is that the Democrats are losing them. I mean, this used to be the party of the working person, and it's not. It's the party of now. It's less the party of the working person, more the party of college educated.
Yeah,
we have to expand the electoral college map. We just can't keep playing the same game every time. Let's quit talking about Texas and actually do something about Texas. How is it that we have North Carolina on one side, Georgia on the other side, shares media markets with South Carolina, and one of them is a stone cold Republican state, and the other 2 are jump balls. I mean, it makes no sense. We're not playing this very well. We got too dug into this targeting of individual states. We got to open up the map.
Interesting.
And that has helped. Harry Reid did it in Nevada, which was a big help. Arizona went the last time. We got to get more states over on our side.
Hey, Carla, one more Michigan question, which just occurred to me. Are you hearing anything about electric cars? Are there?
Yes, it's obviously a big deal here, and that's an issue for some of the down ballot races, where people are talking about electric cars and wanting them to be manufactured in Michigan.
Pro or con, or which way?
I mean, they have to walk a fine line. It's like, yeah, we want more manufacturing in Michigan, and we want it to be made here. And the Republicans have tried to exploit that. The Democrats being pro-electric cars, that's gonna hurt Michiganders, on the lines at the auto plants here. So that has been an issue, and that is something to watch in terms of Democrats, and some of the reasons they're losing some of the working class voters here. Is they concerned about manufacturing. That's why you saw Ro Khanna here. That's one of his big issues, manufacturing and bringing it to some of the red states. This is not a red state because Gretchen Whitmer and the House their legislature is Democratic controlled. So there are hopes here that they're going to be able to make some gains there. But as Dan said, yeah, that's been the big issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge point. There was a great piece in the Times or op-ed yesterday that the biggest split, when you break down the demographics, is between college educated women and non-college educated men. And it was like 45% or something like that. And it's just it's education, it's gender,
Well, it's a societal issue. It really is a societal issue. It's a political issue, but it's a societal issue. We have to figure out a way that, us guys are not feeling left out, so.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly not left out on this show. All right, Carla Marinucci, Bill Carrick, Dan Morain, thank you all so much. Thanks all for all your help throughout the campaign. And I want you to all to know that my new passport arrived in the mail this week. And so the next time I speak to you, it may be from that little island north of Norway.
And I'm working through Italian citizenship, so we may see you over there.
All right, everybody.
Are we doing this again next week?
Oh, probably, huh?
Okay. Okay.
Although, what will we know? First of all, you'll probably still be sleeping because you're gonna get up till the final returns are in. So you may be Rip Van Winkle there, pal. I don't know.
It'll be going on next week for sure.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
See y'all.